It's not, why is not going?
Everybody, good afternoon. Give me a second to get my Instagram live. And here we are. All right, Attorney Mubarak here from Mubarak Law with important updates for all the phone calls and everything we've been receiving. So we'll give everybody a few seconds to join. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them through, and we'll make sure to answer the questions as they arrive. We saw a lot of updates, and we're going to go through all of them, and some of them that didn't make it through the executive orders. So we'll get started, and we'll talk about what's changing and what we have been kind of anticipating from all of these news and updates that we kind of knew were going to come, and see if we can talk about how it's going to be affecting our clients or maybe your family members. And let's start right there. Okay, so big controversial one is going to be this right here: protecting and value of American citizenship, putting an end to birthright citizenship. If you don't know, ACLU and 3 other states have already filed suit against this. This was pretty obvious that this was coming. This is a constitutional right under the 14th Amendment. All people born in the U.S. or naturalized are under the jurisdiction of the United States government. I think that this is going to be a very hard win for Trump. I don't think it will happen. We already have case law in the past about trying to create subclass of U.S. citizens. Again, this is trying to state that if you give birth to a child and you are out of status or here on a temporary visa, basically if you're not a U.S. citizen or you're not a green card holder, and the child of the citizen is of the child born's father is also not a citizen or green card holder, then that child will not get birthright or automatic citizenship because of this executive order. Well, I don't think the executive order is going to trump, no pun intended, the Constitution, but we will see what will happen with that. As mentioned, these ACLU has already filed a lawsuit against that. We already have some comments. Thank you for that. That's exactly what we're talking about. First order up is the birthright. I don't think that's going to stand. I don't think that's going to be going very far. The only question that they're going to try to state is, does this person fall under jurisdiction of the United States government? And I think that's a really tough argument. Again, this is going to make a subclass of citizens, and trying to differentiate who's a U.S. citizen and who's not. I don't think that's going to happen through an executive order. To change our Constitution, we need more than a majority vote, 70% of the Congress, to change our policy. All right, we're getting more questions. So I want to talk about this executive order, which I thought was a little bit sneaky: protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national public safety. All of these are on the White House website. You can go check them out under executive orders. Read them for yourself. Some of them are really short. Some of them are ambiguous. But this one talking about the national protecting us from terrorists and other national security concerns. Why do I think this is sneaky? Well, it is saying that within 60 days of this order, the Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security should identify all sorts of countries which tend to lend themselves to terrorism, to determine whether or not these countries should be issued visas. Basically, what they're setting us up for here is travel ban. We had 3 versions under the first administration, and now it's going to be attempted yet again. What's scarier about this particular executive order is it's also talking about they want to then, once these countries are identified as high risk, to determine who has been admitted in this country under visas and see if there's any reason for removing them or from the United States. Basically, is this going to become a witch hunt for people for protesting, international students who may have been involved in protests? Are we going to now not only ban people from entering, but try to remove people who have already entered and who qualified for their visas and who have otherwise not violated? So I think that this one hasn't received the attention it deserves yet. This protecting from foreign terrorists, good title. We all want to be protected from terrorism, right? However, it's going to set up themselves for the travel ban. Many of the travel bans that failed previously was because of the lack of notice, lack of implementation, not following proper procedure. This executive order, I believe, is about following the procedure in order for their travel bans to stand. Of course, for those who don't know, another not even an executive order, we just saw a few minutes after President Trump took the oath, the CBP-1 program. CBP-1 program was one of the last ways or avenues for people to apply for asylum at the southern border. And basically, some people have been waiting months, if not half a year to a year, for their appointment. And now these appointments were canceled within a few seconds. Many of these people staying in tents or temporary housing in Mexico, waiting for their appointment that was promised under the Biden administration. And these appointments are now gone. This was called the CBP-1 program. Again, ACLU also filed an emergency lawsuit and trying to stop this from ending. So we should see where that goes. That's going to be a tough call. They're not on U.S. soil. They're not on jurisdiction. I'll be very interested to see where that is going to go. So another thing that I saw that wasn't part of an executive order that is going to be pretty incredible and creating a big impact on our immigration court system is they fired top 4 immigration judges. I'll give you their exact titles here. Let me pull it up. Fired them yesterday. These are individuals that have been serving our government probably close to 20 years, if not more, and have been fired without notice. This includes the following individuals: the acting director and the national head immigration judge. It's clear that they are going to create policy for the immigration courts. Oftentimes, you'll hear them talk about, we need autonomy from the immigration courts. We need, checks and balances. What we're going to see is no checks and balances if this continues to stand. If the immigration judges are going to be giving marching orders from the executive branch or from the Trump administration on how to, rule on these cases or certain goals, how many people to deport a month or how many hearings to deport a month, it seems to me that they're cleaning house, and they mean to do so in order to start drastic changes in the immigration court. Again, that was just something you can Google: immigration judges fired from the Department of Justice. This was not included in the immigration orders, and we're going to see more major changes from that. Of course, we saw the executive orders declaring a national state of emergency at the southern border. This is to deploy the military and unlock certain funding from the U.S. government to have presence at the border. So that's the reason of this national state of emergency. Words like invasion, I think, are also being strategically used because of old constitutional laws or acts, because when we are being attacked, it gives greater authority to the U.S. government or to prevent an invasion. So none of this, I don't think that there is any accidental language usage here. It's very intentional. They definitely learned a lot of lessons in some of these executive orders and setting themselves up. I think birthright, seeing President Trump sign it yesterday, he kind of seemed to know that it was going to be challenged and probably wouldn't go very far. You can't change the Constitution in an executive order, and I still do believe that. Now, there are some questions. I'll just take a pause to look at these questions and put them up here. One question was like, do you believe that the conservative Supreme Court is going to withhold the birthright and the birthright? No, I think it's a constitutional issue. I think Congress has to change it. If it makes it all the way up to the Supreme Court, I'll be surprised. We have some questions about 751. Thank you, Tatima Queen 97, for your question. 751, for those who don't know, is removal of conditions. If you obtained residency through marriage and your marriage was less than 2 years at the time of filing, you have to file a Form 751 to get permanent residency, basically to show the bona fide nature of your marriage, if it's still intact, if the marriage is ended, the reason why, has there been abuse, has there been just, separate of ways, marriages fall apart. More than 50% of marriages in the US tend to end in divorce. So if you are married with a 2-year green card and you do get divorced, it's not the end of the world, but 751 is the form necessary to obtain permanent residency. Now, processing times can take 2 to 3 years for the 751. A couple important things to note here. If you file that form, you'll get a receipt with a 48-month extension. With that receipt, with your expired green card, you are basically, that's proof of your residency. You can travel so long as you don't have criminal history. If you're trying to meet the naturalization requirements, you need to be sure of your travel. So if you have any kind of messy or complicated situation as relates to your marriage, criminal history, or travel dates, please consult with an attorney. But otherwise, with that receipt and with your card, you should be able to travel and maintain your status. They give you that 48-month extension because that's how long some of these cases are taking. Now, if you file a 751, you might not know this, and you're still married and the case has been pending for at least a year, and your spouse is a citizen, you can file for naturalization under the 3-year exception as long as you are together with your spouse and living in matrimony and you meet the other requirements. So that is a good way to push your 751 faster, and by not delaying your citizenship is another thing that you can do. So Ms. Nellie Ness has a question from our office. Processing time for application with USCIS going to change because of all the proposed changes. Absolutely. One of the greatest changes, if you've seen some of my other videos about what was to come, is delays. If they can't outright stop the immigration, their intention by some of these officials has been made clear explicitly with their own words. It's going to delay. So we'll definitely see delays in many applications. You can count on that. One other thing I saw that I felt was important to share today is DACA. Okay, so DACA, this is the childhood dreamers that have been waiting for some type of resolution for years on end. DACA was the program started by President Obama, and again, President Trump ended the program, stating that he hopes Congress acts, and then Congress never acted, or they couldn't agree on the southern border, so we never got a solution to DACA. Texas sued the U.S. government when President Biden brought back DACA, and has been caught up in litigation since then. Basically, it's still in the same situation unless it applies for people living in Texas. We're still waiting for a final decision, and it sounds like we're going to have to hear from the Supreme Court on DACA to determine what's going to be available. Somebody's asking if we could please translate to Portuguese. Probably can't today, but we can definitely do a Portuguese live in the future. We have 2 people from our office who speak fluent Portuguese, and that's something that we can do, and I promise we will work on that to make that happen. So for people with DACA, only those whose applications have been granted can you continue to renew, and you can continue to maintain that benefit of DACA. For those who have filed new applications and have never received DACA, you're still stuck, unfortunately, in limbo, and there's not much that can be done for you at this stage. We always tell people, if you've been here that long, if your situation's changed, always make a consultation with an attorney. If you have an employer sponsor, a family relative sponsor, these are different things that might lead to a solution for you. So that's some of the things we talked about. Now, a lot of our clients at Mubarak Law have been very nervous about what's coming. And for my Mubarak Law clients, we are doing a special private town hall meeting. So if you are one of our clients, just go ahead and email Andre or reception at Mubarak Law to make sure you get scheduled. And we're going to have a private town hall or live session where you guys can have confidential space to ask me questions regarding to what to expect. And attorney Lada Ghanem will also be joining me that day. So it'll be hopefully a very informative session available only to our clients and by RSVP only. But of course, if you're not a client, we will continue to do these lives, or if you want to become one, we're here to help. Here's another question. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Mubarak. Do you have any information about prosecutorial discretion has been revoked through an executive order? Thank you in advance for your response. So he being President Trump, signed an executive order revoking 78 of President Biden's orders. I'm not sure if any of those particular orders were the discretion. Many of those memos, if not today or yesterday, it is my opinion those PD discretions will be gone. I do think that is something that is a great tool for both the government, individuals, and ourselves. Sometimes there's some individuals who are criminals who do need to be removed from the U.S., and we should not put them in the same category as non-criminals. So that was the idea of prosecutorial discretion over the years. It did go away under the first Trump administration. So I do believe it's quite possible it will go away in the future. Also, not directly, explicitly immigration executive order. However, the federal employees being forced to return to full workdays, non-virtual, I'll be curious to see if this means no more virtual hearings for us, for our clients. Must we go to court for every single hearing, or will we still have virtual hearings available? That's something you need to keep in mind, because if you fail to comply by appearing, whether or not you're trying to do it online, you could be removed. Most people, please, if you have a court, understand that you must attend court, even if you believed it was virtual. Otherwise, that's something you should check with your attorney. So those are some of the biggest changes that we've seen. And another final thing is that what we're expecting, and we saw the czar of immigration, as President Trump talk about these raids, right? Deportation raids. And what does that mean? So it looks like they were planning on doing raids in the city of Chicago or Illinois today. But because of that information being leaked, there seems to be a change in plans. So we will see to what will happen in the coming days and these raids. Of course, if you're here without status, it's nothing new that you can be removed or placed in deportation or detained. This is something that we're going to see that's going to affect many communities. And a lot of times people ask, well, who's going to be affected? Many times families are going to be ripped apart. People, if prosecutorial discretion goes away, then there's no consideration for individuals without criminal history, right? So that is something where we'll see that will happen. And there's not much that can be done to avoid it, other than having your family prepared, meeting with an attorney, preparing for that worst case scenario, having your documents in a safe place, and knowing whether or not there's options to defend your deportation or removal case. We have a couple more updates for you. It's been a very eventful less than 24 hours, I would say. One thing that's happening locally, I would say, and I'll talk about it. Let me just have a sip. All right. So a week or so ago, Governor DeSantis said he wanted a special session to address the Trump administration's agenda for immigration and basically trying to make Florida government meet 2 months ahead of time, or less than 6 weeks, 8 weeks ahead of time, to start to formulate a plan to assist President Trump's removal agenda. This now is pretty problematic because I just received a copy of the legislative proposals from this, and I can share it after this so you guys can read it. And basically, the state of Florida, or under Governor DeSantis, would like to criminalize people for entering the state of Florida. One of the things I read, if you entered the U.S. unlawfully and then you're in Florida unlawfully, essentially that could be a criminal offense, basically taking away that separation of federal enforcement to the state levels and putting it here. I think there's a couple of issues that will be there. One, just resources, training, constitutional due process, lots of issues there that we see that could easily develop from the state of Florida trying to criminalize immigration. Essentially, we'll see if that will pass and what will happen with that. But there's several other things here that is pretty problematic. And then also Congress passing that Riley Act. This is basically going to prevent people without criminal history obtained bonds in many cases, or that seems to be what the goal is. I believe this was passed just today. That's at the federal level, and that is going to make what bonds or release is available, give state certain rights to sue the U.S. government if an individual is released from state. So I'm just pulling up here to see if it was passed. It was passed in the House, and let me see if the Senate has passed it or not. I thought I saw it. Yep. So Lake and Riley Act has passed the Senate. This was yesterday. This is also going to give a lot of power for the raids to detain people. For example, somebody with a petty theft offense crime or just an accusation, a lot of times can be held detained indefinitely from some of the preliminary readings that I read from the House. So it is going to be a huge display of force and power, I believe, these first couple of months. It's a way to show he will be fulfilling his campaign promises. Some of these executive orders were not going to fly, and some of them will have considerable consequences for many people. Good afternoon for those joining us. Thank you. If anybody has any other questions, those are some of the biggest points I saw from the last 24 hours. Again, our clients, in our office, we do some removal, some deportation defense, but we do a lot of investor, family-based, extraordinary ability petitions. For now, we haven't seen specific changes on this yet. Remember, this has only been the first 24 hours, but those cases, if anything, we can probably see delays in those processes. But if you're going through a marriage-based process to a U.S. citizen, please, the sky's not falling in regards to you. There shouldn't be panic. A lot of the chaos and fear is intentional. However, this is going to be pretty drastic for people without status or people in removal proceedings. But somebody who's not in removal and going through the marriage process for now, please rest assured that this is not something you are going to be focused on. So we have another question here. Can you please share a take on new USCIS policy for EB2 and IW? Talk on that for a second. And then we have another one here. What do you think will happen to DEDs? DEDs stands for Deferred Enforced Departure. DED, we have it right now for Palestine until August, I believe. That is something that I believe will go away under this administration. It's typically deferring enforced departure is not really on brand for the Trump administration. I think they are enforcing departures. So I don't see a world really where that stays. I could be pleasantly surprised given the severe situation in Gaza and in other places where we have DED. But with the current administration's priorities, they're not really issuing any memorandum on delaying a departure or a deportation. So I think that is something that would be allowed to expire and not renewed. So that's some of the biggest concerns here. Again, if you're one of our clients tuning in, I know you have been calling and reaching out to us. We're doing our best to update you all. And many of you are not affected by these processes, but we want to create a space where we're doing everything possible to inform you. So for our clients, we are going to have a private meeting that will be confidential for you all to ask questions. You must have a password or RSVP to join. It'll be myself and attorney Lada. So if you're watching and you're one of our clients, send your case manager an email that you would like to be present, and we'll make sure that happens. This may be something that we do regularly during the next year, if not more. We did these lives a lot when we first got into COVID, and it was very helpful for people. So if you all give positive feedback and you join, please let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to check Instagram here. All right. Birthright citizen, will that be active before September 2025? For those who missed it. Okay, so I don't think birthright citizenship is going to have a lot of teeth. And again, this is for people who are born to non-US citizens, non-permanent residents. I think that this is going to be challenged. ACLU has already filed a lawsuit against two of these executive orders. That's the CBP one and the birthright. So keep that in mind. Be on the lookout for coming travel bans. I do think that's something that's going to come. And that's all I have for you all today. I hope you guys today enjoyed today's live. And if you found it informative, you'll share it with everybody. Leave me a comment. Let us know how we did. And if you're a client, please reach out to me or your case manager and let us know that you want to join our private town hall for Mubarak Law clients only. As a reminder, we are based in Orlando, Florida. We practice federal immigration, so we can represent you in any state. And we also do accidents or car accidents for injured folks. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed today's live. And I look forward to helping and representing as many people as possible, as we have been doing for nearly 15 years. So please reach out if we can be of service. Thank you.